Welcome back to On the Grid Podcast, Series 3, episode 30 something. I can't remember what episode number it is. I think it's 36, which is, how we're rattling through the episodes. 34, is it? 34. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So Qatar Grand Prix edition. So I think the biggest talking point, first of all, is Max Verstappen, 3-time champion of the world. As ever, joining me is Adrian Keita. Adrian, how are you? What do you think of Verstappen and his third world title?
To begin the episode, I think that was the most chaotic intro I've ever heard in my life. But I think I like it. It's something different. It was very chaotic. It wasn't structured and organized as we usually do, but I think it adds a bit of an element of a bit different, something different. But yeah, Max Verstappen, 3-time world champion. As everybody will see from the thumbnail, it is titled a 3-time world champion for a reason, because he's done it. He's done the 3-time world champion. He's there, and he joins a illustrious club of 3-time world champions. But yeah, it just defies. It shows what sort of season he's had. He was able to do it in the sprint, not in the main race on the Sunday, but on the Saturday. And he secured P2. So what's that? I think he even got the fastest lap in the sprint. So he secured 8 points regardless. But yeah, it's just a tremendous feat by an unstoppable driver this season.
Yeah, it was a bit of a chaotic intro, but it was a chaotic weekend because, as you said, it was a sprint weekend, which seemed to always throw up a number of things. And in this case, quite literally with Esteban Ocon. But yeah, as you said, Max Verstappen secured the title on the Saturday, winning 7 points in the sprint from Oscar Piastri. So if we start off as we always do, we'll go through driver by driver. So we'll talk about their entire weekend. So as we said, Max Verstappen, he qualified for the sprint in third and finished second. He qualified for the race in first and finished first. So, first of all, you have to congratulate Verstappen on another excellent weekend. Of third world title, becoming one of about 5 drivers, I think, to win 3 in a row. Fantastic achievement. I know we've spoken many times about how dominant that car is, but that being said, you have to still win it. You still have to do the job, and he's done a tremendous job. There's 3 races this season that he hasn't won, which is testament to the way he's driven and performed this season. So an excellent season from him, and but I'm hoping it will be a little bit closer next season. I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for the Max Verstappen this weekend. It's almost perfect, but I just think in the sprint, he didn't have the best sprint day. Got out qualified by both McLarens and was beaten in the sprint. So I've only gone for a 9 out of 10.
Thing is, for this, I've from my notes, I've very much gone as in the sprint, and I've gone the race. So I kind of, if you're hearing me kind of stutter in this episode, it's because I'm flipping through the 2 pages, because it's very much organised as one section for quali and the race, and one section for the sprint shootout and the sprint. But yeah, like you said, a dominant weekend this weekend. Maybe not the Saturdays that he'd have hoped for. Albeit he's still got on the podium and he's secured his 3rd world championship on the Saturday. But yeah, I've gone with a 9 as well. The sprint, like we say, it wasn't perfect, but he still qualified P3, and he finished in P2. So he still gained a position and finished on the podium. And then in the race, it was dominant. I mean, the McLarens were not far away off him in the race. Only, I believe, 4.7 seconds. The lead to Oscar Piastri, the lead between Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri in the end. So they weren't a million miles away, the 2 McLarens. But Max Verstappen, I mean, he just came, he saw, and he conquered once again. It's what he does. He lives for it. He loves Formula One. And he's done it again. So a 9 out of 10 from me. Not the perfect weekend, but still very, very good to secure his third world title.
Next up, Oscar Piastri. He qualified for the sprint in first and finished first. Qualified for the race in sixth and finished second. An easy 10 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. His second, from us, our second 10 out of 10 performance, along with Silverstone last year. You know, what more does this guy have to do? He was fantastic. He was quicker than Lando Norris all weekend, was full value for the podium, for the sprint race win. And he is a race winner in Formula One before Lando Norris. And he's a rookie. So let that sink in for a little bit. So a 10 out of 10 from me. Unbelievable job.
I was about to say you're living up to your chaotic expectation this episode, because you said Silverstone last year, and I don't think Silverstone. Well, I mean, Silverstone was last year, but like it was a couple of months ago. What we're talking 3-4 months ago?
It feels like last year. It feels like last year.
Yeah,
Honestly.
it does. It does feel like last year, and hopefully next year, when we go again, hooray, exclusive. Yeah, hopefully it lives up to the expectation next year as well. But yeah, it's an easy 10 out of 10 from me. Gaining four positions in a race, and then obviously qualifying first for the sprint and finishing first. Easily a 10 out of 10 from me. I wouldn't say he was a lot faster than Lando Norris this weekend. It was a little bit faster because Lando, I think in the race, I think Lando had the edge over Oscar. But in the sprint, there's no doubt that Oscar had the upper hand over Lando. Um, I, I think the McLarens were evenly matched throughout the weekend, but I think Oscar takes a pick of the bunch and he edges it with his race victory in his P2. And it's weird to say because Oscar Piastri, a race winner before Lando Norris, and Lando Norris has been in the sport for 4 years now. So it's a weird thing to say, especially for a rookie driver, to just come into the sport and get a race victory, albeit being the sprint, of course. But that's what these races are for. They're to create a bit more excitement, a bit more fun, and a bit more jeopardy, which they certainly did. And we've got another first time winner in Oscar Piastri. So easy 10 out of 10. Fantastic weekend for McLaren all round, and a good overall weekend for Oscar Piastri as he takes his first victory in Formula One.
On now to Lando Norris. Qualified for the sprint in second and finished third. Qualified for the race in 10th and finished third. I'm going to give Norris an 8 out of 10. I think there were plenty of mistakes in his weekend. I can see you looking shocked there. But if you break it down, he was well beaten. He was beaten in every session by his teammate, by his rookie teammate as well. As much as we praise Piastri, he is a rookie. In qualifying on the Friday, in the final part of qualifying, he made two mistakes, which knocked him down to 10th. He even admitted if he was up there, he could have been challenging for the win, but he wasn't because of his own mistakes. It wasn't as if there was two red flags or that cost him whilst he was putting in a lap time. He made the mistake. He cost himself a chance at the victory, or at least a chance for P2. He was good in the race, though. You can't fault him for that. It's still a very good performance. But look at the 10 out of 10 performances we've given Norris. This wasn't it. This was nowhere near it. Look at the 9s and 10s we've given him for excellent performances in the past, and this just wasn't the same sort of drive. Like you compare it to his drive in Singapore where he finished second, or around Silverstone. He was a much better. He performed to his best. So I think not for Norris an 8 out of 10, which may be a little bit harsh, but I'm going to stick with it because I think that he was well beaten by his teammate and he made a number of mistakes.
And I'm going to disagree with you on that one. I've given Norris a 9 out of 10. It's not up to Oscar's standards, of course. Lando didn't win a race. Lando didn't finish P2. He finished P3 twice. He's still on the podium. There's no doubt that I can't give him any lower than a 9 out of 10. Making up 7 positions alone in a race is fantastic. And he did that he did just that. Strategies, he obviously McLaren had to play with his strategy because there was mandatory 3 pit stops that they had to make. And I think they nailed it down to a T. Like you said there that he was well beaten. I don't think he was well beaten by Oscar Piastri throughout the weekend. I think, yes, he did make mistakes, and yes, he could have started further up the field, was it not for that mistake and going off track in qualifying. Um, but I don't think necessarily that's what caused him to be well beaten. I think he would, if he was even to start alongside Oscar Piastri in the race, I think he would have beaten him. And that's not me going, oh, Lando's a better driver than Oscar. I think they're on par this season. I think they're relatively on par. But throughout Qatar, especially in the race, Lando was catching Oscar very quickly, and I think the margin was underneath a second as both of them crossed the line. So, albeit there was a team radio call for Lando to hold position, and Lando did go on record to say that he thought he was faster, but the team didn't go about thinking about that. Apart from that, I think the two McLaren drivers had a very similar weekend. I don't think Oscar beat Lando by a lot, but obviously the race victory kind of states otherwise. But I think both of them had a fantastic weekend, and I don't think Lando deserves an 8 out of 10. I think a 9 out of 10 is warranted for two podiums in a weekend. So 9 out of 10 for Lando Norris. Like Oscar, both of them had a fantastic weekend.
I think the only thing I'll say is that, you say that what was it, that he was Piastri. If he was alongside Piastri, then he would have beaten him. I agree with that. I think, in the race, certainly towards the end, he had better pace in that. If he started close to Piastri, he would have finished ahead of him. He would have finished second place and maybe even first if he had the pace. But he didn't, because he made the mistake. He made the mistake in qualifying, which cost him that opportunity. Piastri made a mistake as well, but he already put a banker lap in. That was, despite the track evolution and everything else, it was still good enough for sixth place. So it was still a very good lap time. The only people that beat him was Verstappen, the Mercs, Alonso and Leclerc. So it was still a very good lap time from Oscar, the banker time, which put himself in a good position and capitalize on what happened in front of him in the race. So, you could say that, but I just think that the way that Oscar drove compared to Lando, that's the reason for the disparity in my grade. Moving on now, though, to George Russell. Started the sprint in fourth and finished fourth. Started the main race in second and finished fourth. So a number of fours for George Russell. I've not given him a 4. I've given him a 9 out of 10. A very good performance. It's bordering on a 10 out of 10, to be fair. He put in a great lap in qualifying on Friday for the front row start. He wasn't too far off Verstappen either. I think it was under 2 tenths. A very, very solid sprint day. The pace wasn't up to the same as the McLarens, but he maximised the results, I think. And then obviously we have to talk about the race and that lap 1 incident, which was very painful for me to watch as a Mercedes fan. But you look at the way he recovered, and he went from sort of 15th to 4th. With I would imagine there must have been significant damage on that car given the force of the crash. So to come through and finish 4th was nothing short of remarkable. On a weekend where Mercedes needed to not be beaten again by Ferrari. They'd been beaten for a few races before that with their points total. They needed a good weekend, and they got it.
Yeah. I mean, your explanation kind of given me a bit more of a perspective why I should not give George Russell a 1 out of 10 after that crash. And I mean, the whole farce about going 3 wide into turn 1 or into turn 2, for example, where we saw that incident with Ocon, Hulkenberg, and Sergio Perez. 3 into 1 just never goes. And we see numerous drivers try it time and time and again, and it's the same case. One driver crashes out, or two of them, or even three of them in some case. But in that incident, I think George Russell did tremendously to come back from. I think it was essentially the back of the grid, which was 18th, but then it turned into 15th because I think Bottas and a few people ahead of him pitted for new tyres, to then go to fourth and control it and go on the softs. And I mean, he tried a bit of an aggressive strategy and it didn't come off. He wasn't able to be on the pace of the McLarens. But to go through the pack and to make some quality overtakes and finish fourth, just a testament of his driving, and it just kind of shows some level of confidence that he's bringing back, because in recent performances he's not had that confidence, he's not had that energy to kind of execute overtakes and make him stick. So I've also settled with a 9 out of 10. Of course, it's a bit of a shame that he couldn't be on the podium because of that crash. But to finish fourth nonetheless, and to finish with probably significant damage to the car, and to finish so high up in the field, it's just testament to his driving and shows that he's kind of bringing the good old George Russell back. So yeah, 9 out of 10, very good performance to claw it back on the Sunday, and it's all fours all around for George Russell, but it's not a 4 out of 10, it's a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, like you said, he's not in the best season, but it was a great performance from George Russell. On now to Charles Leclerc. He started the sprint in 6th and finished 12th. Started the race in 5th and finished 5th. I've gone for a 7 out of 10. Now, I'm not sure if this is a little bit controversial, but I thought he was just quite mediocre this weekend, especially given the crash that the Mercedes had at the start. There was a chance for him to really put some damage on Mercedes and close the gap and help Ferrari. And not only that, but close up to his teammate as well. His teammates ahead of him in the championship. And also, you look at the way that the McLarens are driving. Lando Norris is 9 points now behind Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc could be finishing as low as 8th in the Drivers' Championship this season. You got to say, it's been a really up and down season for him. I think the fact that Ferrari were outscored by Mercedes this weekend is crazy to me. And in the sprint as well, he made 4 track limits violations on the last lap, which I think he was 6th at the time. I think he finished on the road just behind Sainz in 6th, and then got a penalty which knocked him down to 12th. So I'm sure it's quite a disappointing weekend for Leclerc. He kind of needs to find that form a little bit. He's been overshadowed by his teammates in recent weeks, and get back on the podium.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. As a Ferrari fan, it wasn't pleasant to watch what unfolded, and especially with Sainz having not even being able to start because of a fuel leak. You were putting your money on Charles Leclerc to put a decent performance to score some points. But the point you make about Ferrari probably being disappointed about being outscored by Mercedes this season, I say this season, I meant this race. I don't think that's necessarily true, because you look at it and you're thinking George Russell qualified second for the race, and Lewis Hamilton qualified third for the race. So even ahead of a race start, you're expecting the 2 Mercedes to be ahead of the 2 Ferraris, especially with Leclerc being in 5th and Sainz qualifying in 12th. So I don't think necessarily Ferrari will be disappointed that they've been outscored by Mercedes in this race. But what I think will be the most disappointing for Charles Leclerc is that potentially there could have been a podium on the cards if Verstappen, Russell, and Hamilton were all out, which was not the case. Verstappen and Russell survived, and it was only Hamilton that was crashed out. So it's the best of a bad bunch for Leclerc. He started 5th in the race and finished 5th in the race. His Saturday wasn't ideal. You mentioned there about the track limits violations. Plenty of drivers did that on the Saturday and on the Sunday, so I don't think it's necessarily a bad one, but it is mistakes that Leclerc was making, and he shouldn't be making, if he wanted to claim some more points. But I think Leclerc's still very much hungover from last season. I don't know what it is. I don't think anyone can put a finger on it. I just don't think he's the confident self that he was in 2022. I think he's just trying to minimize the mistakes that he's been making by just driving just sensibly. And I think, especially this weekend, I think he was driving too sensibly. I don't think he was going for the moves that he could be going for. So yeah, Leclerc's had a bit of an up and down weekend and season overall. So I've gone with a 7 for this weekend, and I've matched you. It's just when will we see that old Leclerc for 2022 come out? Will it be next season, or will it be when it's too late? I don't know, but I'm hoping that when we come to Texas and to the latter stages of the season, I think he really needs to showcase his talents and show Fred Vasseur what he can do ahead of a new season in 2024.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree with that. Fernando Alonso next qualified for the sprint in ninth and finished eighth. Qualified for the race in fourth and finished sixth. I've given him an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a very good performance from Alonso this weekend, actually. That Aston Martin is an absolute tractor. It was the fifth quickest car this weekend. So the fact he put it on the second row, qualifying fourth, I know obviously he was aided by the fact that the two McLarens got their lap times deleted. But it was still a great qualifying performance. And then finished sixth. He was a little bit fortunate, I think, not to receive a penalty. There was a couple of mistakes in there where he rejoined the track maybe a little bit dangerously, which I think he might have got a penalty for on another day. But yeah, a couple of uncharacteristic mistakes from Fernando, but overall sixth in that Aston Martin, which has just seemed to go further down and further downhill, is a good performance. So an 8 out of 10 from me.
I've gone 0.5 more than Charles Leclerc. I've gone with a 7.5. I don't think it was an 8 performance. I think in the sprint, of course, he finished eighth, making up one place. But in the race, I think he should have finished a lot lower. He should have been given that 5-second time penalty. He came on the track like a madman, and he didn't really respect anything. He just came back on the track, made a mistake, came back on the track like a madman, and nearly wiped out Charles Leclerc in the process. So it could have been a case of me saying, "Oh, Leclerc's out and Alonso is out," but it wasn't. But the FIA need to respect something that he came on the track in a rash manner, and he should have been penalised. He should have found the gap behind. I think it was Leclerc and Ocon that were racing together. I think he should have slotted behind Ocon, and then I think it would have been a respectable gap, a sensible gap that he found, and he was able to race in. But to finish sixth in an Aston Martin, it just shows that Fernando Alonso is the father of just driving like a madman and extracting every little bit of the performance from a crap car. We saw that at Renault in his second stint in the 2010s. We saw that in McLaren. And we saw that at glimpses of it in Alpine. So it's just Fernando Alonso doing Fernando Alonso things. So yeah, 7.5 out of 10 from me. A good performance in a crap car, which doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. So 7.5 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso for the Qatar Grand Prix weekend.
On now to Esteban Ocon, who you just mentioned. He qualified for the sprint race in 10th and didn't finish. He qualified for the race in 8th and finished 7th. I've given Ocon an 8 out of 10. I think it was a very solid performance from Ocon. He's had a few races where he maybe hasn't performed to the standard which you expect from someone of his quality. But I thought this weekend he was very good. He was unlucky in the sprint race because he did it. It was just one of those incidents where 3 cars don't go into one or into two, and it was a bit of a passenger in that sense. Maybe he moved over a little bit too aggressively, but I think he was still a bit unfortunate. And then in the race, he'd done fantastically well, considering he actually threw up in his helmet on lap 20, and then kept going and still got some very good points to the team, was quicker than his teammate, and made it work and got some valuable points. I thought he's done a fantastic job. So an 8 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, I think throwing up in your helmet and finishing in the points warrants probably a decent rating. So I've settled also with an 8 out of 10. The sprint wasn't meant to be. Like I say, I think he was getting, well, Sergio Perez tried to make the move and Nico Hulkenberg was in the mix as well, and they all just tangled together. And I think the three of them. Yeah, the three of them ended up retiring in the end. So, what did I say at the start of this episode? 3 into 1 don't go together, and in some cases, all 3 drivers are retiring. That was the case in the sprint for Perez, Ocon, and Hulkenberg. But in the race, throwing up in your helmet and finishing in the points. Some drivers like Logan Sargent, obviously being a rookie, he wasn't able to carry on. But Ocon, to show the supreme athlete that he is, and to show his experience, he carried on, he soldiered on, and he finished in the points. It's just a testament of his character and what he's willing to do for Alpine. Because I think in the preview of this Grand Prix, we did say that Alpine could be a little bit of a dark horse, and I think Ocon did exactly that, finishing 7th. So a good weekend, a positive weekend, albeit the Saturday ruined his start of the weekend a little bit. But yeah, with the humid weather and the whole race being essentially all of them being qualifying laps to do what he did warrants an 8 out of 10 from me. So a good Sunday, especially for Esteban Ocon.
Next up, Valtteri Bottas, sprint qualifying 13th, sprint race 10th, qualified in 9th and finished 8th. So 9 out of 10 from me. I think he's performed brilliantly. The fact he's got 4 points in that Alfa Romeo, and we've spoken time and time again about how bad it is. It's one of the worst cars on the grid, and he's pulled off some a great strategy. I think he pit under the safety car right at the start on lap 3, which would have meant that he could do 3 stints of 18 laps to see his tyres through to the end. And it was very clever, because by the time the safety car came in, he was actually on the back of the pack with some fresh mediums. I think he started on the softs as well, so it got rid of the softs pretty quickly. So it made a lot of sense. And then from there, he didn't look back. Some great points, and he showed he's not done yet. He's not just in here to make up the numbers. He's not an early retirement. He's still got some fight left in him.
Well, I think the music that was beaming in his radios when he did that interview with Ted Kravitz, I think that's what kind of motivated him, and the vibe was set for Valtteri Bottas. But yeah, I've settled with an 8.5 out of 10. It's a brilliant performance to qualify in Q3 for the first time in what seems forever for the race. That gives me a tick. Obviously to obviously not score points in the sprint, but to make up 3 positions, it's another tick from me. And then to actually get points in the race for a team that's been struggling a lot this season is another bonus. So yeah, he did everything right this weekend, and Alfa Romeo are, I don't want to say are back, but I don't think you can count them out to score more points this season. I think they've got life in them yet, and I think they can score a few more points finishes throughout the rest of the season. But an 8.5 out of 10 from me for Valtteri Bottas. Definitely not here to make up the numbers. And that is why he's staying in the grid for 2024. That's exactly why. Those sort of performances defy Valtteri Bottas and show that he's still in it for the enjoyment and the love for Formula One. So yeah, 8.5 out of 10 from me.
On to Zhou Guanyu next. Qualified for the sprint 15th, finished 14th. qualified 20th and finished ninth. I've also gone for a 9 out of 10. It's sort of the opposite to Bottas, whereas he started on the mediums, had, I think, 3 long stints, and then put the softs on towards the end. It was a great performance, really. Because he's qualified in 20th, he's effectively started 18th, because I know Perez started from the pit lane. Sainz didn't start. So to go from 18th to 9th is an unbelievable job. He needed a points finish. It would have been very easy for Bottas to steal all of the headlines after that performance. But, back in the points, first time since Spain, all that time ago, where, again, we were praising a brilliant performance from Zhou. So we've got it in his locker. We just don't see it enough. So a 9 out of 10, some great points. You can't knock him.
Yeah. This performance is very, very close to a 10 out of 10 from an Alfa Romeo team that we've said that has been struggling so much this season. I've settled with a 9.5 out of 10. I don't think it's because of what happened in the sprint and he wasn't able to get anywhere near the points. That kind of bumped the grade down from being a 10, but still a 9.5 out of 10. I mean, he showed it's the same as Valtteri Bottas. I think it's a very much a warrior type of performance where Alfa Romeo just didn't have anything to lose, and I think the three kind of pit stops strategy kind of played a lot of jeopardy in this weekend, especially in the race, and I think I liked it. I think I like the concept of just a little bit of jeopardy, a little bit of something different. Obviously, Zhou made up, what was it, 9 places in the race. And yeah, I can't give any more plaudits out because it's a great performance. It's not one of like a Max Verstappen where he kind of qualified first and finished first. It's a drive where he's made up places. He's used his strategy fantastically. He's used the tires to the limit, and he's been able to get in the points without making any mistakes. So yeah, brilliant performance from me. Close to a 10 out of 10, but I've settled with a 9.5 out of 10.
And the final points finisher, Sergio Perez. He qualified for the sprint in 8th and didn't finish. Qualified for the race in 13th and finished 10th. It's a solid 3 out of 10 for Sergio Perez. 3 out of 10, which is higher than his last his performances. So it's not a good result for Perez. He was a little bit unlucky in the sprint, but then he made up he done nothing in the race. I know, the Red Bull's sort of advantage was almost negated because they couldn't show off how good they are at conserving the tires, but Perez was just slow. He was just really slow. He didn't make his way through the field. Obviously, he started from the pit lane, which effectively became 15th when the safety car came out. A few cars pit, and he just didn't do anything with it. He got up into the points. He got up to 9th and then got about 20 seconds worth of penalties and track limits violations. So 3 out of 10. The only reason it's that high is because he got a point. He's very, very lucky that Hamilton didn't finish this race. Otherwise, that advantage in the Drivers' Championship would be cut dramatically. You
make me giggle every single time we talk about Perez because I was expecting you to. It started with a solid, and I was just about waiting in suspense. Is he going to give him a high grade or something? And then a solid 3 out of 10, which I couldn't agree on more because I just don't know why he goes for moves like that. Does he Is his hobby just driving into the side of people? Does he fancy being a kamikaze pilot or something? Because every single time he goes for, I think he's trying to take some leaf out of Daniel Ricciardo's books, but he just can't execute it at all. He tries to go for a late breaking move, thrashes into him, retires, and then Christian Horner has to come out and bail him out in the media. But yeah, I've settled with a 3 out of 10. I don't want to talk more about this guy because he just wastes viewing time and talking time. Because he's just there. Red Bull Red Bull have put in quotations that we're going to help them as much as possible to get more points, but they're just not, are they? They're just gonna their main priority is Max Verstappen. That's always going to be there. Sergio Perez is the number 2 driver at Red Bull. That's always there. So yeah, 3 out of 10. Bog standard performance for Sergio Perez. I think that's the usual norm for now, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't disagree. That's not really, can you? Next up, another one who we love to slate, Lance Stroll, qualified for the sprint in 16th, finishing the race 15th. Okay. Yeah. On now to Lance Stroll, another person who we love to slate. He qualified for the sprint in 16th, committing assault in the process. He finished the sprint in 15th, qualified in 17th for the race, and finished 11th. Oh no, sorry. He committed assault in the process of qualifying 17th, and then was all smiles after qualifying 16th. It's a 2 out of 10 for me. The only reason it's a 2 out of 10 and not anything lower is because the fact he finished 11th. Again, he got about 20 seconds worth in track limits penalties. When is there actually going to be serious media attention saying, why does Lance Stroll have a seat? In the last 5 races, he hasn't got a point. His last point was in Belgium. This is getting a bit ridiculous now. He's on 47 points. He's level with the 2 Alpine drivers. Fernando Alonso is out here, grafting. He's on 183 points. He's trying with all his might to fend off the McLarens who are scoring podium after podium. And there's Lance Stroll, qualifying down in 17th and, having a little strolled over to 12th. It's absolutely absurd. It's getting ridiculous now. He's finished in the points 8 times this season with 17 races in. For the most part of this season, Aston Martin has had a car that has been fighting for points. Fernando Alonso has double the amount of points finishes this season than Lance Stroll does. Need I say any more? It's a 2 out of 10. Shocking performance. Get him off the grid.
What can I say? Lance Stroll is very much a smooth operator when it comes to pushing people about and doing other things. That's a 1 out of 10 from me. I'm giving him -1 from you. It's simply because of his stinking attitude. He thinks that he owns the business. He seriously thinks he's above everyone else. And then to go on record and swear in an interview and give one-word answers. Okay, you may be frustrated. Okay, you might not have the best time in Formula One at the moment. But that's because you've gone on record to say that you want to retire and play tennis. You've brought this upon yourself. It's not like, oh, it's come out of the blue. Oh, he wants to retire. He said it himself. He's the one who's gone on record to say that he doesn't want to be in the sport anymore. And he shouldn't have been in the sport in the first place. He's bought his seat. His dad has bought his seat in Formula One. In junior categories, he wasn't that amazing. And he's just gone on the grid. Okay, at Williams, he did score a podium. And I think that was the best achievement of his life in Formula One up to yet. It's seriously a 1 out of 10. He really needs to grow up and find his big boy pants, because he needs to put the sole blame on himself and find a way how he can score decent points in the last 5 or 6 races, because what he's done this season compared to Fernando Alonso is like another level compared to him. And we all know that. Lance Stroll, seriously, buckle your ideas up, because Yuki Tsunoda, rumour has it, could be stealing your seat any moment now.
I've not heard that rumour, but that's a nice surprise. So I will just tell everybody our 1 to 10 rankings for the entire season. Fernando Alonso is 3rd. Lance Stroll is 21st. This is over the course of a season, so it's not as if we're, being particularly harsh on one race. It's simply not good enough, is it? It's really not. But anyway, we could talk about him for hours, but we won't. On now to Pierre Gasly, qualified for the sprint in 11th and finished 9th, qualified 7th and finished 12th in the main race. Not too sure what happened with Gasly, to be fair, because he was running up in the points. He was having a strong race. He seemed just to slip back and slip out of the points. So I don't know whether he had a penalty or something like that I just missed. But yeah, he missed out there, and then as well to miss out just in the sprint race. He was fighting with Alonso, but missed out by a few car lengths on that last sprint race point. So no points for Gasly this weekend. It's a 6 out of 10 from me. Very average. Could have been better on another day, but not to be for him.
To say that we were labelling Alpine as dark horses for this weekend for Gasly to qualify 7th, but inevitably finish 12th is a little bit disappointing. He did obviously get those track limit violations, which didn't help his cause. But then again, I think he would have still finished outside the points. So yeah, it's been a very mediocre weekend for Pierre Gasly. I don't know what's happened to him. I think this is the case of his teammate being far superior to him. We obviously said about the McLaren case, but I think this is a much stronger case of Ocon being stronger than Gasly throughout the weekend. And yeah, it's a bog standard 6 out of 10. I don't think we can talk much about Gasly, but he just had a troublesome time. I don't know whether it was due to the weather or to the car not suiting the track or something like that. But I mean, we saw the car suit the track with Esteban Ocon, and he threw up in his helmet, for God's sake. So I just think that Pierre Gasly just didn't fancy it too much, I don't think. And I think it's the case of him just not having the best of weekend and just having a bit of trouble, should we say, with acclimatizing to the track and the surface and the wind, etc. So yeah, 6 out of 10. A little bit synonymous, I will say that, but I mean, you're always going to find it hard on a track like Qatar with the weather and the track conditions, etc. So a 6 out of 10 from me.
Moving on now to Alex Albon, qualified for the sprint in 17th and finished 7th. Qualified for the race in 14th and finished 13th. Now, I think for Albon, the sprint race does a lot of the heavy lifting. He made up 10 places in the sprint race. Didn't have as much joy in the actual race. So I've gone for an 8 out of 10 balancing it all out. He's got 2 points. And if you say, he's picked up 2 points in the race, so he finishes 9th, you probably would think about giving him about an 8 out of 10. It's a good performance. It's more points, but it's nothing special, especially from a driver of Albon's quality. You almost kind of expect him to produce those sort of drives. So a good performance, an 8 out of 10 worthy for me. He missed out on the Sunday. I think he didn't quite have the same pace he did on the Saturday.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on the Saturday aspect. He had a tremendous sprint race, but obviously that's maybe due down to Leclerc's penalty as well, which promoted him to 7th. But then again, regardless of that, he would have been P8 and scored points and made up 9 places. So yeah, you said that. I don't think I can add more to that. You worded it down to a T that the sprint, that the Saturday did the heavy lifting, and the race he was a little bit anonymous in that one and he wasn't on the pace of the other cars. But yeah, 8 out of 10 for me. The Saturday was tremendous. The race just wasn't, and I think both of them just balance each other out for about an 8 out of 10 performance for Alex Albon.
Speaking of anonymous, Kevin Magnussen qualified for the sprint in 19th, finished 13th. Qualified for the race in 19th, finished 14th. Slap bang in the middle for me, 5 out of 10. It wasn't a great weekend for Haas. Magnussen was quite slow compared to Hulkenberg, particularly in qualifying, has become a bit of a theme this season. But he made up places in the race. He finished ahead of Hulkenberg, actually, in the race. It's not the greatest weekend for them, but where is that Haas car? It's probably the worst car on the grid. Most importantly, is they've slipped down to ninth in the constructors. They've slipped below Alfa Romeo after a big points hole from them. So it will be a little bit worrying from them. Not too good from Magnussen and Haas. So 5 out of 10.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's very much I mean, you can look at it one of two ways. Yes, he did make up places in the race, but that's 3 of those places he gained were because Sargent retired, Hamilton retired, and Sainz didn't start. So he's only made up 2 places in the end. And then in the sprint, if I flip over, yes, okay, he qualified 19th and he finished up in 13th. But still, 4 of those, started ahead of him with Hulkenberg, Perez, Ocon, and Lawson all starting ahead of him. Only Sargent started behind him in sprint. So I've gone with slap bang in the middle, 5 out of 10. It's just a bog standard Haas performance, really. It wasn't spectacular. It was probably the standard that Haas had, and I think they were another team that kind of struggled throughout the whole weekend. So 5 out of 10. It was just bog standard average.
Moving on now to Yuki Tsunoda, qualified for the sprint in 18th and finished 11th, qualified for the race in 11th and finished 15th. I think Tsunoda was a bit of a weird one. He made up some good places in the sprint race, made up 7 places, and was, not too far away from the points, actually. Slipped back, though, in the race. I think that was mainly down to strategy, really. I don't think AlphaTauri maximised their strategy with either driver, to be fair. But I think Tsunoda actually had a decent weekend. I think he'd done just about as much as he could, really. I've given him a 6 out of 10, which might be being a little bit nice, but yeah, I thought he was the better of the two. AlphaTauri's by far this weekend, and got a little bit unlucky.
Once again, it's a driver that kind of the Saturday carried him. Qualifying 18th for the sprint, not ideal, but then finishing 11th kind of made up for the woes of the sprint shootout. But the race, it wasn't brilliant. He lost 4 places, and he qualified 11th and finished 4th and finished 15th. So I wouldn't say it's another bog standard performance from another driver. It's a very, very average Yuki Tsunoda performance, and another driver that struggled a lot. So I've also settled with a 5 out of 10. The Saturday was good for him, but I think the race and just losing them positions, especially with Sainz starting behind him, and then Hamilton kind of starting a lot ahead of him. It's just a hard one to call for Yuki Tsunoda, whether you can class it as a good weekend because of his Saturday or a poor weekend because of his Sunday. So I've just gone straight bang in the middle and gone with a 5 out of 10.
And on to the other Haas driver, Nico Hulkenberg. He qualified for the sprint race up in 7th, but did not finish, unfortunately for him. Qualified in 15th and finished 16th. It's a 3 out of 10. No, it's a 4 out of 10. I'll be slightly nicer. The sprint race is exceptional. Where he's put that Haas in qualifying is unbelievable. Didn't finish. He got just squeezed by Ocon and Perez. He had nowhere to go. But then, how stupid do you have to be on the formation lap to park in the wrong box? He's just driven straight through his own box because he's seen that there's nobody in the one in front of him, even though there's on the side, there's massive text saying SAI in that box and HUL for the slot behind. So I don't think he really recovered from that. Got a 10-second penalty, I think, instead of a 5-second penalty, which is what's usually given out. And then finished down in 16th place. So it's a little bit embarrassing for Hulkenberg, and I'm sure it's a race he'll want to forget. But I'll give him a 4 out of 10. I'll increase it because of his sprint race qualifying.
Yeah, I've gone with another driver that deserves about a 5 out of 10. It was very much average. I don't think we can give him less than Kevin Magnussen to say that he may not have finished in a sprint race, but to put that Haas into SS3, and then obviously that unfortunate collision that happened was not his fault. So I don't think you can fault him on that one. But in the race, yeah, it was a little bit of a silly incident where he just kind of drove into the wrong pit box, and I think those things happen. I think especially when you're a driver and you're looking at your steering wheel and making sure it's all configured with the right settings before the race start. I think those things happen. And as soon as he rolled into that pit box and saw Sainz's letters in there, he kind of thought and went, oh yeah, I'm in the wrong pit box. And from there on, you kind of can't go anywhere. You kind of stuck with that situation. So it's another driver where the case for Saturday was better than the Sunday. And overall, once again, slap bang in the middle for me. So a 5 out of 10 for another driver.
And the final finisher in the race on Sunday, Liam Lawson, he qualified for the sprint in 14th, didn't finish. Qualified for the race in 18th and finished 17th. This is unfortunate. It's a 3 out of 10 for me. I don't think he was good all weekend. And it's really unfortunate. This is the last race, certainly for this season, that he's going to be racing in, because we expect Daniel Ricciardo to be back for Qatar. And it's his worst performance of the lot. He's put in 4 very good performances, and then this is the one he slips up at and he struggles with. It's very unfortunate for him. So especially because we don't know when the next time we're going to see him in a Formula One car is. He's not got a seat confirmed for next year. But yeah, it's a 3 out of 10 for me. It's slightly disappointing from Lawson. I'm sure he'll be gutted that this is his last race in Formula One for quite a...
Yeah, I couldn't agree with him more on that one. It is a 3 out of 10. Yeah, it's one of those races where it's kind of a bit of a disaster class. But then again, he's one of a select few drivers where they've not raced around that track at all. And as a rookie in quotation marks, it's going to be a little bit tough on you to just acclimatize yourself with one practice session to the track, and you go straight into qualifying into a race event. And those things happen. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame that we couldn't see a good Liam Lawson performance in his last race in Formula One for what seems to be this year and certainly next year. I'm hoping he'll be back on the grid in 2025, whether that be for the new AlphaTauri team, which we don't know what its name will be, or even for Red Bull. He might even step up to Red Bull straight away. You never know. But yeah, very much as a 3 out of 10 performance. It's not the performances that we've seen Liam Lawson produce in the last couple of races, but I think he'll hold his he'll have his head held high after some very, very good performances in Formula One, and obviously let's not forget he's a point scorer in Formula One in the couple of races that he had in Formula One. So yeah, hopefully he's back stronger and better in 2025 if he gets a seat in 2025. But this one just wasn't meant to be. So a 3 out of 10 for Liam Lawson.
On now to the retirees. Logan Sargent qualified for the sprint in 20th and didn't finish. Qualified for the race in 16th and didn't finish. It's a 3 out of 10. You got to feel for him in the race. He was suffering with, I think it was the flu in the week leading up to the race. And then given how strenuous that race was, he just couldn't physically cope with it and had to retire the car. He was running in decent position. For the start of the race, at least, he was keeping up with Alex Albon, and then just slipped further and further and back, and to the point where you could tell it was affecting him, and the only thing he could do was retire. He did make a mistake in the sprint race, where he beached himself and had to retire unforced, and he also qualified last for the sprint. But I think the way that Williams are rallying behind him, it's his seat to lose for next season, but it's unfortunate for him, I'm sure, that he physically wasn't able to continue in a race where a lot happened, and he was performing well at the start as well.
Yeah, it's a 2 out of 10 performance for me for Logan Sargent. It's an unfortunate one, similar to Liam Lawson, where we weren't able to see the best of Logan Sargent just because of the complications and because of the weather and how it kind of took a toll on his body throughout the race. But obviously he's a rookie. He's not going to be used to Qatar like Liam Lawson, and it's going to take a toll on your body. Essentially it was all of those laps were qualifying laps. And it took a lot out of every single driver to finish that race. But yeah, it's just one of them performances where you feel bad for him. Like you say, he kept up with Alex Albon in probably the first couple of laps, but then once it was the long haul of doing qualifying laps for the whole duration of a race, he was just going to slip backwards and backwards and backwards, and he did just that, and he had to retire the car because he just could not finish the race. So a 2 out of 10 for him. Hopefully he feels better for Kota next week. And hopefully he kind of shows Williams that he's still got fight left and he deserves the seat for 2024. But after Qatar, it'll be a little bit sad that he had to retire. 2 out of 10.
On to Lewis Hamilton, qualified for the sprint in 12th and finished 5th, qualified for the race in 3rd and did not finish. I've given him a 5 out of 10. I think maybe I'm being a bit too nice, but in the sprint he was very good. He made up a lot of positions, including some great overtakes on both the Ferraris, which I just thought I'd rub in because I've got to latch onto something. So good points in the sprint from where he had to recover from, given the fact that it was unfortunate that he was starting that low down where he had a lot of quicker laps which were done for track limits, which was unfortunate for him that it's these fine margins, unfortunately, in this sport. A great qualifying, could have been on the front row himself, started on the softs. He went for the move. He had to make the move in the first corner to not get bogged down. And unfortunately for him, he's just misjudged where Russell's going to place the car. It's a racing incident. I think maybe Hamilton should give him a bit more space. He's misjudged it. He's come out immediately afterwards and apologised. But I've got to give him a 5 because of everything else in the weekend, to be honest. Maybe, I'm sure you'll disagree with this, but yeah, from me it's a 5.
I've gone with a point lower. I've gone with a 4. But maybe that's purely down to what he did on a Sunday. And it was very much a little bit of a Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Silverstone special. But Lewis Hamilton was on a crashing end instead of George Russell in this case. And I think it was kind of coming a tangle between the two Mercedes drivers because they've been very close in the races to each other. And I think it was just going to culminate to one of them crashing into each other, and that's what happened in Qatar. I mean, I can't say that he did not have a good sprint race because he did. He made up 7 places, qualified 12th for it, and finished 5th. But for Hamilton's standards, qualifying 12th is simply not good enough. He should have been in Q3. But he's another driver that fell foul to his own mistakes. So I think Qatar for many drivers like Hamilton, like Leclerc, like George Russell, Lando Norris, and Oscar Piastri, who finished on the podium. It's a learning curve and one that they'll have to learn from, especially with us being back in Qatar next year for another race. I don't know why though. They pushed it. They've pushed it back for a month. Hopefully meaning that it's going to be a bit colder. But it's the Middle East. It's red hot there most of the time. So the drivers are likely to struggle once again. So it'll be interesting to see how the FIA handle some of the scrutiny that they may get if a race is like it is this time around next year. But on Hamilton's case, it just wasn't meant to be for him this weekend. So I've settled with a 4 out of 10.
And last but not least, Carlos Sainz. He qualified for the sprint race in 5th and finished 6th, qualified 12th and did not start. I've given Carlos a 6 out of 10 because you can't judge him off the race because that's nothing to do with him. It's a fuel leak, which wasn't his fault. And he had a solid sprint race. So I think a 6 out of 10 is pretty fair. I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's not too much to talk about, but very solid. He'll be disappointed with how far down he qualified, but it didn't really matter in the end. It doesn't matter at all. So 6 out of 10.
I've also settled with a 6 out of 10. I think it was a decent performance for Carlos in the sprint, but then in the race he couldn't do anything, could he? The fuel leak kind of stopped him from going anywhere, and in the end, he just had to sit in the garage and watch the race from a TV screen and just kind of listen to what the team has to say to Charles Leclerc all race long. So, yeah, 6 out of 10 for the sprint. Overall, it's a 6 out of 10 because you can't really judge him on the race. It's a bit of an average weekend purely on the basis that he couldn't start the race, but I think he would have been able to make a few moves here and there in the race, and I think he would have finished near Leclerc's kind of position, near around the 5th to 6th mark, because we all know that Carlos Sainz is a very racy driver. Even though he qualified 12th, I think he would have easily finished inside the points. So 6 out of 10. A weekend that kind of it's labelled with ifs because of Carlos's did not start in the race. So a 6 out of 10, and that rounds off our driver ratings.
That it does. So thank you all for listening. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of On The Grid Podcast, where we've been reviewing the Qatar Grand Prix. We'll be back next week going over our predictions from this weekend and also looking ahead to Qatar next weekend when we have yet another sprint weekend. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.